The first 6 days, as described in Genesis 1, takes us from the creation of the universe to the creation of humanity. The entire account is described in a mere 31 verses. Most colleges probably have 20,000 books on the events covered in those 6 days, not from a theological perspective, but from a scientific one. With only 31 verses in the first chapter of Genesis, we shouldn't expect each divine detail in the cosmic development described there to leap off the biblical pages. The flow of events during the first 6 days of creation is driven by the recurring divine command, and God said. This directive, which appears 9 times in the first chapter and the 10th in the second, foreshadows the unfolding drama of a universe in the making. With God so intimately in control, we should expect smooth sailing in that most amazing of cosmic voyages. Surprisingly, according to the biblical account of those events, that seems not to have been the case. The very fact that in those 31 verses the Bible felt it necessary to enlighten us 7 times over that God saw it was good, and even very good, might imply that perhaps at times it was not so good. Of course, that would be absurd according to the image we project of an infinite, always in control God, the Father figure of the Bible, creator of the heavens and the earth. But let's see what the Bible has to say. On the 3rd day of creation, we are told that God commanded the earth to bring forth the first form of plant life, which is vegetation. We read, "And God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, herbs yielding seed, fruit trees yielding fruit, each after its own kind, with its seed in it." That verse is the statement of the divine command for the earth to produce the first forms of life. The description of nature's execution of the command follows in the next verse. What do we read? Pay attention closely. "And the earth brought forth vegetation, herbs yielding seeds of its kind, and trees yielding fruit with its seed in it after its kind." The execution of the command seems essentially the same as the command itself. Seems the same, that is, until we read the words more closely. God's command asked for fruit trees yielding fruits, but the earth produced trees yielding fruits. A minuscule, seemingly insignificant divergence, but an astonishing implication is revealed. The earth did not comply. The earth rebelled. Instead, the earth brought forth trees bearing fruit, not fruit trees, bringing fruit, the wood or bark of which would also be a fruit. Perhaps God's demand exceeded nature's potential. Can the wood of a tree ever be a fruit? That is how close nature came to doing what it was asked to. Nature simply failed to comply with God's command. The Torah didn't have to tell us of this rebellion. If nature's rebellion had been kept a secret, all we would know is trees of wood. But the Bible comes to teach reality, not some fantasy we might have desired of a storybook God orchestrating a make-believe world. The Torah makes a point of informing us about this rebellion to break that image of an always controlling master, a super powerful father image. Such a God makes a lovely, heartwarming, even reassuring fable. But unless the Bible got it wrong, the ever hands-on God of our childlike imaginations is not the deity of the Bible active in our world. The Bible in these verses tells us an almost incomprehensible fact. Nature, purportedly bound by unbending laws of nature, which were themselves created by God, somehow was able to do the unimaginable. Nature was able to go against God's explicit command. Nature rebelled. How is this possible? Well, the scientists agree. Freeman Dyson, a physicist, tells us atoms are weird stuff, behaving like active agents rather than passive substances. They make unpredictable choices between alternative possibilities according to the laws of quantum mechanics. It appears that mind, as manifested by the capacity to make choices, is to some extent inherent in every atom. The universe is also weird, with its laws of nature that make it hospitable to the growth of mind. If mind or wisdom, as biblically noted, is indeed the inherent essence of all existence, then the mind in nature, which of course is the product of God, could conceivably rebel, deviate from the word of God. Humans call this free will. When Adam and Eve are reprimanded for having eaten of the forbidden fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in the Garden of Eden, God also punishes the ground. And to Adam he said, because you listened to the voice of your wife and ate from the tree which I commanded you, saying, you shall not eat from it. Cursed is the ground because of you. Adam and Eve ate the forbidden fruit, and God cursed the ground. Why punish the ground at this point? It was Adam and Eve who ate the fruit. The ground was totally passive here. There is, however, a common theme between the eating of the forbidden fruit and the ground not fulfilling its calling. And that theme is rebellion. First, on day 3, the inanimate ground rebelled by not minding God's command. And then later in Eden, the first humans rebelled by deliberately disobeying God's command. Rebellion was in the air, and God chose to nip it in the bud. But he didn't, did he? As we learn a few chapters further on in the biblical text, free will and rebellion remain facts of existence. Could nature's ability to rebel be the source of the rare negative genetic mutations that mar which might otherwise be a properly formed baby at birth, or allow for cancer to run rampant as it does today? God created our universe with its inherent ability to diverge from God's divine plan. In the opening chapter of Genesis, we are explicitly instructed by God to do what? To have dominion over the world. Subdue it, conquer it, rule over it. By giving us such authority, God has placed with us the responsibility to repair the errors brought about by the ups and downs of nature. An example of success in fulfilling this communal responsibility is found today in medicine, science, and technology. God gave nature a mind of its own. And then God created man and says, dominate it, rule it. It would rebel, but subdue it. God never gave humans dominion over humans. He gave humans dominion over nature, because nature has a mind of its own, placed there by God.